My name is Gyatrul. I live in San Francisco. I've been involved with Orgyen Dorje Den and Gyatrul Rinpoche for about 30 years or so, since the early 80s. It's hard to know where to start, but I'll start when I started. I started at an early incarnation of Orgyen Dorje Den, and we set up a center in San Francisco that was in a funky, what used to be an old shop, garage, car shop. Cement floors, brick walls. It was in the early 80s. We thought it was very hip, very cool. We set up as best we could. Gyatrul Rinpoche came down and was very excellent. We set up this living center, etc. And later we find that Gyatrul Rinpoche thought that exposed brick walls looked kind of cheap. Like usually people would cover brick walls. And I had a kind of an aesthetic thing at that point, which was wanted to kind of bring California into whatever we were doing. And it was clear that this was a traditional Lama. This was a traditional setup. Gyatrul Rinpoche would always tell us, you guys decide, especially in the early days. When dealing with anything, setting up, you guys decide. We would go ahead with questions, you guys decide. I realized later that we kind of had to earn our way into his trust and him into ours. It was mutual. So we set up, we started going. I was treasurer for a long time with my partner, Rob Weatherston. He was the president, I was the treasurer. We switched back and forth. We were kind of a team. There were other members that were there then, some of which are still with us now. Sully Carlson was one of them. Over time, we evolved through that early Dharma Center into another Dharma Center. It was a difficult time. And at this point, we were devoted to Gyatrul Rinpoche and Orgyen Dorje Den. We had gone through articles of incorporation. We've done all the kind of business part of setting up the Dharma Center. So I was introduced to the Dharma kind of through the back door. I knew people. I was connected in helping set up a Dharma Center, but I was no means a dedicated and progressed practitioner. And I hadn't studied that much. I was studying as we were going. And for myself, I found that it was my karma to help set up a place for the Dharma to be taught. And that's where I learned the Dharma. But for Gyatrul Rinpoche, he was in it for the long game. I can kind of see this now. He wasn't sure what was going on with us, but we were connected in a way to the Bay Area that he had been connected before, and the connection had been kind of, not severed, but loosened. So I didn't quite get how happy he was to kind of have a footing in the Bay Area again. And that kind of grew over time. And in different incarnations of our funky warehousing kind of, apartment building or office building and Dharma centers, we were very serious. We were very dedicated. We were very devoted to Gyatrul Rinpoche, as he was to us. He would bring the most amazing teachers, practices, the most amazing things that you could imagine at that time would come to our little funky doors. And this was part of his long game. So eventually we kind of grew out of, expanded out of the little places that we were at, and he had a sponsor. He had Joel Shefflin, he had Scott Lopez, and Scott Lopez asked me to help him be on the ground to find new places. we looked for like 6 months. Not every day. 5 months? 10 months? 9 months, okay, however long that was. It was a long time. And we saw a bunch of different places. But we knew when we came to this place that this was a suitable place for Dharma activity, that this was a suitable place for Gyatrul Rinpoche to expand his activity. And this is, I didn't realize at the time that this is kind of what he was waiting for. So, once we got to this place, I'll just say this part, Scott. We got him to the front door, and we had the keys to go in. He stood outside on the porch and he looked up at the sky for a moment. And then he looked down and he said, okay, yes. We hadn't opened the door yet. He knew this was the place. This was one of the things about him that was astonishing, miraculous, call it something. He knew things that we didn't know. So, once we started kind of inhabiting this place, we had the situation of trying to figure out how to pay for it, trying to figure out how to, we figured it was all about expanding, the number of people that came and donations we got, I was involved in the money part. At some point, Gyatrul Rinpoche stopped saying, you guys figure it out. And he started just bringing things. And I forget which, I think it was this chandelier first, arrived in a crate from, I think it was Taiwan. All of a sudden, things started coming. And we would try to set things up. We had an old, there was a mortuary, of course, before. We had old furniture, we'd move things around and just trying to set things up. And Gyatrul Rinpoche would come in and just point here, this there, bring this in here. And all of a sudden, he was very distinct and sure about what he wanted. Well, this is what he ended up with. Look around you. There's no place in this country that you can see something like this. This is as close to a traditional Tibetan temple. I imagine, I haven't been to Tibet, but help me here, people. But you can see, in a California 1960s, building. This part of the building is 1960s. We all know the other part is from the 1890s. But he knew that he would create this place that was suitable for Dharma. So here we are, and here's this place. This is it's miraculous, of course. This is Gyatrul Rinpoche's intention that this is here. It's his activity to cause this to happen. I happen to be one little cog that he happened to bring in to be able to help him. But this is all Gyatrul Rinpoche. So, in a lot of ways, I feel like Gyatrul Rinpoche is still here. Physically, he's there. But I don't feel like he left us. I feel like he resides here in a lot of ways. And I feel like this is where we come in the future. This is not over. This is a transition period for us as Sangha. Sangha in Oregon, Sangha here, Sangha in Mexico. Doing these practices has brought us all together in a way that was maybe unthinkable before. The harmony, the love, the compassion shown to each other for all of our loss, physical loss. But we have been studying with Gyatrul Rinpoche. We know that all of this is impermanent. So here we are. Here we are in this place. It is our good fortune to be here in this place. It is our good fortune to be here in this place with Gyatrul Rinpoche. This will continue. I this point, it's you guys figure out what you want to do again, because he can't tell us. But we will figure out what we want to do, because this is where the Dharma will flourish in the Bay Area, in this country, and for the world. Thanks to Gyatrul Rinpoche and his miraculous activities. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Scott Globus, as you probably know, and I'm going to say a few words today about some of the experiences that I've had with Rinpoche and the Sangha over the last 30 plus years. So I became a Dharma student in 1990, and it was really at the time of Venerable Yantan Rinpoche's first trip to America, just a little bit before that. And so I was just, of course, blown away by Yantan Rinpoche and spent time traveling around the country following Rinpoche as a brand new student, just, absorbed completely into all of these, rituals and empowerments, and also, of course, having the opportunity to connect with Gyatrul Rinpoche, Sangye Khandro, and Lama Yeshe, because the two of them were the principal helpers, so to speak, Sangye translating and Lama Yeshe doing umze and chupin duties and so on. And so I was mesmerized by all of this and was doing recordings and helping out and so on. And it was just like fun, right? And that was, a launch pad into Dharma activity for me. And then the conclusion of Yantan Rinpoche's first tour of America, he came to Orgyen Dorje Den, which was then in the Mission District of San Francisco, and he gave some final parting advice. Well, everybody was in the crowd just adoring Yantan Rinpoche, just tears in their eyes, requesting him to come back soon and everything. Well, at the end of that teaching, Yantan Rinpoche left, and Gyatrul Rinpoche grabbed the mic. And he just said to everybody, hey, you guys, it's not enough to just, say I love you, but you have to create the conducive circumstances and the conditions to invite the Lamas to America or to your Dharma center. And so I realized afterwards that that really had an impact on me. And that we, the students, the aspirants, the ones who want to learn from our teachers, we have to create these conducive conditions for the Lamas to come to teach and for us to learn. So at the time, though, it was just kind of cool there. Rinpoche was like, he was going to have the final word, too. But nevertheless, as time went on, I was active and helping and doing different things. And at one point, I went up the first visit to Tashi Choling, and Rinpoche and Sangye Khandro were very gracious and invited me to lunch. And during the lunches, Rinpoche was telling stories about the Vajrasattva statue and creation of that, and really talking about Dharma activity. And at one point, Sangye, tell me if my memory is okay, but Rinpoche was getting pretty intense and even pounding his fist on the table, making points about how really to do things purely, and we really have to take care of things nicely. And he said, it's not about the money, but to take care of the money, and also really emphasized the importance of preserving the Dharma through recordings, through transcripts, and so on. So this too made an impact on me, and I helped with those kinds of activities as well. And then kind of fast forward to the future, these are a couple of little vignettes where Rinpoche, I felt like was really kind of illustrating to me personally, and of course to others, but we were doing a retreat many years later at Tashi Choling. And here we are doing this very sophisticated Dharma practice, and Rinpoche was taking small groups of students out to the back of the Tashi Choling into this wood pile, where he was making us in the hot sun. Well, I wasn't saying making, but he was having us go through the wood pile and extract nails and pieces of wood and so on that could be utilized in the future. Just driving the point home or driving the nail deep that we shouldn't waste even a penny of the money and the offerings of the Sangha. Right? Really just, and it's like, here we are in the hot sun, and we're not doing practice, but we're chasing nails. But, through reflection, of course, now, especially realizing the poignancy and the power of Rinpoche's approach to how he was educating us and training us, and then doing, just, guiding us. And I had a lot of privilege to get these kinds of personal instructions. And just sometimes quick little comments Rinpoche would make. And so another little quick comment was, we were already here, and we were in the then just, outer room there, and we were here for a couple of years probably. And Rinpoche just says to me, "Oh, you guys are like 3-year-olds trying to drive a car." And this was about 20 years ago. So in those 20 years, a lot of things have changed, and yet, as I'm reflecting about what to say, I'm thinking, well, some people, I'm going through pictures, and there's Josh, doing chipping duties 20 years ago, and there's Keith making tormas 20 years ago, and, Lamas 30 years ago teaching us dancing, and all kinds of, these activities going on, and so many different ways that we contribute to Dharma and the ways we learn. And so I kind of then wanted to talk a little bit about Lama Dreamin and I had lunch together just a week or two ago, and we were talking about Dharma activities, and we're talking about the skill and the merit, and especially the aspiration that we must have in order to accomplish anything when it comes to Dharma. And so I've been reflecting about that as well, and then thinking about all the things that, not just me, but I'm of course speaking from my personal experience, but all of us have been able to engage in. And so I thought to share some of the fragile aspects about, Dick touched on them yesterday, but just to go a little deeper about the finding and the initial time here at this location, because Orgyen Dorje Den went back to the 70s when Rinpoche, Sangye, Joel Shefflin are on the original bylaws and the formation of the center and other forms. And so there have been a number of incarnations, and at this point we were in the Mintong building over in Oakland, Chinatown. And one day after teaching, Rinpoche invites me and Dick and Les and Lindy, and was Benson with us too, Lindy? Okay, so maybe Benson was there too, but nevertheless, I know that the four of us were there, and Rinpoche's, we're just having a casual lunch, and he says, I might have a sponsor to help with the down payment. Can you guys try and find a center? So it gave a little more, guidance around that, and then, okay, so, I had an office in downtown San Francisco, and I started, that was where I would do my business stuff, but that was also where I would make phone calls and send faxes, and Joel Shefflin was our local Dharma center and longtime student of Rinpoche. He was the real estate expert, and so created this strategy to reach out to realtors and so on, and over time, we started to see some opportunities, and so we went, and Rinpoche would come, and we saw a church in San Francisco. We saw some property in Oakland. We saw another one in Berkeley. We saw one in Alameda. It was going on for months. And, it's like a lot of work, sending out all these faxes. This is back in 2000. So it was during the .com craziness. Real estate was hard to even identify. People didn't really care about some Buddhist group that was looking for a church, but we had finally connected with a realtor, and he was quite capable, and he was giving us different leads and so on, and I would chase him down and track him down and what have you. And one day I'm just driving home. I lived on Treasure Island at the time, and I get this call, a voice message from this guy. Well, I got a place in Alameda, and so I'm thinking, oh man, I'm just tired, should I go or not go, and well, I went. But I kind of, when I reflect about it and I think about merit, I think about aspiration, it was like one more little push. And well, of course, I'm glad I did. And so I came here and I sat out front. I thought, oh, this looks like a cool building. This neighborhood, I'd never been over here really. And so I contacted Rinpoche, and then a day or two later, there was, no interest in the property. I went down to see Rinpoche to show him the pictures I had taken. And before, the minute I walked in, Rinpoche said, oh, I think you found it. And, that was kind of like surprising. And then I showed him the pictures, and a day or maybe the next day, we came up. So here we are, and Joel was there, I was there. I mean, Lindy, were you there too, I think? And Les, and maybe Dick. And so we're walking through, and Rinpoche's really liking it. And we're going room to room, and you may have seen some pictures, and the place when it was just raw, it had been a funeral parlor. There were pews, there was a horrible carpeting there, and upstairs, which has now been transformed to the Lama room, there were these big, ugly chairs. They were overstuffed funeral parlor chairs. And, we all sat around in these chairs for a while, and Rinpoche was there, and he literally, pounded his fist a few times on the chair and said, this is my house. This is my house, And so it was like, wow, that's interesting, and notable. So we finished the tour, and we go to talk to the broker. And again, in the context of how fragile all of these things, to try to accomplish anything in the world, never mind in Dharma, we go there, and there hadn't been an offer yet. Well, the people who saw it just before us put in an offer. And I'm like, oh man, wow, Rinpoche wants this place, and now there's another offer. Well, fortunately, Joel knew what to do. And in fact, he was so sneaky, he saw the offer through the window of the broker's car and saw it was listed for 1.1 million, and he saw that they had put an offer in for 1 million. So it's like, okay, good going, Joel. So then he just says, we'll just put a second offer. We'll be in the backup position. So we say goodbye to Rinpoche, and Joel is, Rinpoche, do your magic, and pray for us, and giving these kinds of requests for Rinpoche, and Rinpoche just drives away. Well, Joel and I go and write the offer, and then we're just in the second position. So what does that mean? That means if the first one falls away, then we get to really do it. All right, so weeks go by, and we're just waiting, and then one day I get the call. Hey, you guys still interested? Oh, yeah. So we're still interested, but now comes more work, because Orgyen Dorje Den only had $19,000 in the bank. So here we're trying to buy $1 million building. Is that crazy? But still, how to do it? So we're thinking about this. And we start a fundraising campaign, and especially Dick and Denise Lai were really active and reaching out to the Sangha. And it was literally, everybody got so excited. I say everybody, anybody who was connected with Rinpoche, with Orgyen Dorje Den, people were giving donations little by little, as much as they could. And day by day, Denise was keeping track. And, it was like a ticker tape kind of thing, and it was growing every day. And this was all fun. So this is what I'm trying to share a little bit, is it was exciting and fun, to have this kind of goal. And we get to $100,000, and that starts feeling like, hey, we could actually do it. And so, okay. So then, make it a little personal. We're getting closer to the day to sign the contract. So everything's a go. Our sponsor is willing. Rinpoche is, of course, ready to go. And I had been working with Joel and with another real estate friend of mine, trying to get even more money off, because, well, even if we have 100,000, we still need a lot more. So I'm like staying up late at night, getting myself all psyched up, watching a movie about, my favorite movie called The Negotiator, and so then that morning, right before I leave the house, well, who calls? Rinpoche calls. And what does he say? He says, don't mess it up. I want that building. And it was just one of many timely calls, but one that I can share publicly. So, long story short, we got, I went in to, see the broker and said, well, we'll do it, but, I want $200,000 more off the price, all these reasons and so on. I said, okay, wait a minute, we'll be right back. And they go and have a consultation, and they say no. So, as hard as I had tried, it didn't work out, but we still were able to acquire the building. And so, I don't know, I kind of wanted to go in, and then 2 months later, Sangye comes and is going to do the first retreat here, Truma retreat. And we're in the parking, or in the driveway, and Sangye says to me, this is exactly what Rinpoche has had in mind for the last 25 years, even down to the columns and the color. Dear, is that true? And so it was like pretty amazing to me, because wow, how did this all happen, right? A group of students, a couple words of instruction and encouragement from Rinpoche, and then it's like, are we in a movie? Like, how did this all unfold? And then, of course, from that point, when we move in, there's all kinds of transformations that have gone on, and along the way, of course, more lessons, and of course, more teachings and empowerments, but it's hard for me to really digest all of the teachings, but some of the instructions that I received from Rinpoche, or that we lived through, kind of come to mind more easily. And Lindy will get a laugh out of this one. We at one point wanted to paint the building. And so I think Rinpoche had probably said very casually, just keep it the same. And well, the board members at the time, we were like, no, we want to try this color or that color. And we had meeting after meeting, testing colors on the wall and having discussions. And I don't know, how long did it go on for? 3 or 4 weeks. And then finally we got to a point where, we need professional help. And so we're going to hire a color consultant that Ann Austin knew. And so, a color consultant comes out, and she looks around and says, I've lived here for 30 years or 50 years or whatever it was. And she says, this is the perfect color. Just keep it the same. and so we went all the way around the block with a lot of blah, blah, blah. But we wound up keeping it the same, even though that was the first thing that Rinpoche had said, and yet somehow we missed that point. But afterwards, it kind of fit together that, that's what Rinpoche had told us. And if you have time for a couple of more like that, Lama Drime and Lindy and others can tell more stories, but I also like to highlight a little bit about the prayer wheels that are in the back. So years ago, one Lama named Shurji Tukul Rinpoche, he donated I think there were 70 of these burlap bags full of mantra, and each one probably weighed 50 or 80 pounds. And there were so many of them, we had to spread them out all over the center, in this room, in the middle room, so that it wouldn't collapse the floor. And little by little, Rinpoche would send them up to Tashi Choling, and that was, I think, the cause, or the contributing conditions, to then create the prayer wheels up there, up in Tashi Choling. And then there was still some left, and then especially Lama Drime and Wei and Melanie Wang, then we started making the prayer wheels here. And of course, they're now in the back. There's a lot of work, busting down the wall, and Mike Asuki and Lama Drime figuring out how to do all of this stuff, and just was another big project. Well, one of the things that sticks in my head is when it was all done, or one time Rinpoche came and Wei was painting and everybody was working, and then Rinpoche made a comment like, now you guys can help other centers, in other places. And it just always stuck in my head. There were a number of times like that where Rinpoche, we would do something and do okay with it, and that would be like the instruction, but then, to carry it forward wasn't just about his centers. Even Rinpoche himself would sit here and give a teaching and then remark to people how, oh, you don't have to come to my centers, just do Dharma anywhere. And always this kind of just grand view that always just was remarkable to me, because it wasn't like grasping or myself or my center kind of activity. Even when we did work so hard on Yantan Tukun Rinpoche coming to give the Rinchen Terza, and that had so many steps of visas and coordination and you name it, so many things. But then Rinpoche whispered to me one time, hey, this is not just for you guys, this is for all of America. And so just opening up this kind of perspective of vast aspiration. And so, anyway, there's more stories and more little things like that, but these have been bubbling up in my mind, especially even when we do these aspiration prayers. And I always used to feel like, God, why are we doing these prayers? Just endless. But now I really know, and now I really love them. So, because I think that that's an important ingredient, like Lama Dreamin and I were discussing, between the merit and the skill, and then this kind of aspiration. And so Rinpoche had just such big aspirations. And so these are, just some little windows that I could perceive and remember and share with everyone, that I think are just really miraculous, to be honest with you. Just amazes me when I think about how things have unfolded.
I was asked to talk a little about my experience with Rinpoche. You all know me from the kitchen, but that's not how I started. Actually, it kind of is a little bit how I started. So I was thinking back, probably 1983, Tashichori. Actually, the temple wasn't built. Rinpoche and Sangye were staying at Chandor's house, which was, at that point, it wasn't even Chandor's house yet. And my girlfriend at the time, Camila Martinez, was cooking for Rinpoche and Sangye and Lama Yeshe. And she said, why don't you come along? Maybe you can do something to help out. I'm going to go cook for this Tibetan guy. And I said, okay. I had been exposed to Tongtapa in Berkeley, and I had been doing some reading, and I was very interested in Zen. And I thought, okay, Tibetan, sounds good. So I'm thinking, what can I do? And I remember the old poem, chop wood, carry water. So I decided that's really all I had to offer. So we came in the back door, washed some dishes, brought in firewood, and Gyatrul Rinpoche came to me and looked at me and he goes, oh, good. So that kind of started my whole experience with Rinpoche. And it literally was chop wood, carry water. Yeah. Well, I think that year, Camila and I, we moved out to Hawaii for 6 months and invited Sangye and Rinpoche to come to, we had a beach house on the Big Island. And a beautiful white sand beach. So they came and Rinpoche, he knew how to swim, but he practiced his swimming and mask and snorkel at this beach called Beach 69 and perfected his underwater swimming and his fish gazing. And it makes perfect sense now that we're going to do a sea burial for the guy who literally, I still have a picture of him with a mask and snorkel. I mean, he wouldn't get out of the water. He was always like looking for shells and swimming in the shallows. When we came back to Ashland, Rinpoche, what was the Namche? Yeah, the Namche was happening. And And so we came out to the valley, we were in a big tent, there wasn't much of a cooking facility at all. I remember just saying, Rinpoche and the monks, you got a barbecue hamburger. And I'm going, okay, can do that, vegetarian, but I know how to cook a hamburger. And so that kind of started the relationship of, here's the job, you go do. And that's kind of how it started. I was, like a servant. And in fact, I think my first, somebody had talked in her talks about nicknames. And I think I probably have more nicknames than anybody else. It changed every year. I won't repeat some of them, but at that point, my first nickname was Makumba. And I think that's because I carried the luggage. And I was big, and I was strong, so it was kind of Makumba, come along, bring that stuff. Kind of a combination manservant, bodyguard, luggage carrier. And I started traveling some with Rinpoche and Sangye, and, came along. Now Rinpoche always made sure that I was taken care of, too. I remember one time we were staying with a sponsor, and he kind of dropped off the luggage and everything, and Sangye were going into the house, and I was kind of asked to leave. I'm like, okay, your job's over. Who are you? It's Graham. And Rinpoche, no, he's staying with us. And so that kind of started this relationship of being part of the family. And as you know, that loss really hard. So lots of things happened after I asked, they'd come and stay. And they'd stay for months at a time. Young Rinpoche came too. So we had many adventures, but I was thinking of one story last night, laying in bed. Had an avocado tree, lots of ripe avocados, big ones. Oh, the size almost of grapefruit. Beautiful. Rinpoche said, oh, I love avocado. Can you pick some avocado? Oh, yeah. Climb up the tree. Picking the avocado. We didn't have a pole, so I had to climb the tree. And goes, throw it down. I go, you're going to catch? He goes, oh, yeah, I'll catch. So I throw it down. Kind of bounces off his hands, on his chest, falls to the ground. He goes, okay, throw again. So throw the next one down. He takes his hat. And we always have hats. Always different hats, but this hat. He sticks his hat out, and the avocado goes into the hat right through, onto the ground. And for many years, I kept the hat. I was thinking too, when things were good, Rinpoche's hair would always turn black. When things were bad, he'd get gray hair. And you could watch that change, always. So when the Sangha really came together, his hair was always jet black. We all feel it. So back to the kitchen. How did I end up in the kitchen? Well, Nanchu was having in Texas, and Rinpoche contacted me in Hawaii and said, oh, we need help. You gotta come. I'd already had the Nanchu, so I'm thinking, okay, I have this empowerment. If I miss a little bit, I'm not going to lose that much. I can get the blessing. But he goes, we really want you to be there in the house, taking care of things. So I go, okay, come. the day that Parinirvana Rinpoche lands, they had just come from maybe a long flight, or you know how that is, a really long flight. I think he had like, what, 15 Lamas and monks with him, huge entourage, and so much luggage. And at the center it was very small, and asked that I come with this truck to help with the luggage. Well, in the meantime, we were preparing food, a couple giant pots to feed, 25, 30 people. And it had already been prepared. I think they had hired, David Lunsford had hired, what was the Shambhala group, to come and actually do the cooking. And so they had already prepared this soup. It's on the stove. And just getting warm, it's already made. So I'm thinking, okay, I could go to the airport with this truck and help bring the luggage. Come back from the airport with this truck full of luggage, and Rinpoche standing at the door. I'd never seen him so angry at me. Actually, I'd never seen him that angry before. And smoke is coming out of the house of burnt soup. I mean, really burnt soup. And the entire house smells like burnt soup. And this is the Parinirvana Rinpoche hasn't arrived yet. I was there with the luggage, and he got in my face, and he's like, out here, and he's like, don't you ever leave that kitchen again. And that's how I ended up in the kitchen. So anyway, we could go on and on, but I don't want to finish the practice. Sorry for the tears, but glad to share them with my family. Thank you.
So, I'm Heka, and I'm more from the Ashland side. We heard from the ODD side the last few days. So in the old days, I thought I should begin there. So really, I'm like the second generation when the Namche rules started. And I think at that time, most of the older students were magnetized. For me in Germany, it was like wings just arose under my body and carried me here. I don't know how I found myself in San Francisco. And I met Rinpoche the next day. Julie Rogers was going to give me a ride to Ashland, and I was not impressed. And I walked in this hall late. My luggage was outside, and Gyatrul Rinpoche was teaching. Yeshe with his big dragon tattoo, the monk. I just thought, what is this? As a German, the whole religious aspect was a little bit too much. So I sat there with my arms crossed and said, okay, I'll just wait for the ride. But as Rinpoche was teaching, it was obvious that I had arrived, He was teaching dream yoga, and he showed so many signs. It was humbling because I think all of us Dharma students, we look for the Guru since young age, and to see this was powerful. And so I stood up. I had come in late, and my luggage was behind the door, and she said, she can stand up, she just got here from another country. No one near me, no one in the room. And he said, she doesn't speak English, she can stand and listen. So he knew, and we saw this Sangye. I mean, you must know endless examples of his miraculousness. And it never stopped. Since we arrived there, we began building the temple, and Rinpoche was always there with us. We'd show up at 6 in the morning, mixing concrete, and Rinpoche was there, keeping us company. encouraging us, encouraging me, and both Sangye and Rinpoche were like one. And for me, the encouragement to be a practitioner was the main message. It was never so much, any time I expressed interest, I wanted to retreat. It was like, just yes, and do it, and you can do it, and this is what you came here for. And so we started, I remember after Pesoli's Parinirvana's Namchu, we started the Nunjo teaching in the temple. We all received the Nunjo, and the walls were still cement. And Rinpoche would talk about the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. I don't remember him going on about Dzogchen teachings. He talked about the foundation. But that was his quality. And for years, during talks like this, he would talk about the foundation. And how many times did I look around the room and everyone was just in tears, just sitting there, so aware of the predicament. And Rinpoche was not just a great teacher, he was a mother from many lives into, maybe mother is the wrong word, but for me, Rinpoche gave me the space in life to be encouraged, to be blissful, and to feel there is enlightenment possible. Rinpoche is a protector. So, anyways, so what was I going to talk about? So a few wonderful things, like I'm sure we all remember his toys, how he would have just always a toy on his throne. And when we went to Poolsville, to the Ranger Translate, he had 2 suitcases full of toys, I believe. And His Holiness Parinirvana was very formal and very intimidating, but Gyatrul Rinpoche got away with it all. He, from morning until night, he would just entertain us, relax us, and Parinirvana would once a day maybe look over, smile, and get back to business. And we were on the floor, sometimes laughing. I had stomach ache for days, and Rinpoche was so amazing in, I guess it's his miraculous activity, so that we could do it. Later on, after, I remember Lamas and Chavitungo would come, many Lamas would come to Tashishiling and bless us. One time I was in a retreat in Williams, and Rinpoche said, call me once a month, just check in with me, okay? So I did that, and he was always saying, like we know, don't stretch. If you're like a baby, you're growing, you can't force it, you know. And I remember one time I had been a little bit under the weather, like depressed, felt for many weeks like in a funk, just in a dark place, and it wasn't coming well. And so I called Rinpoche, I guess maybe picked up the phone and must have said, this is Heike. I remember just him laying into me, I couldn't even say hi Rinpoche, and he does this and he slams down the phone. And I'm sitting there, okay, and I walk out of my retreat cabin, and all the obstacles were gone. I mean, that feeling of you hear birds, there was a blue sky, and I was like, oh, this is how the Guru does it. It just, wow. So, yeah, I don't know. We as to me, Rinpoche is not just this. To me, Rinpoche is all of us, the family, we might not watch the same movies, but we are 40 years, 50 years, we go to the same, we have a samaya together, we have an apartment together, and we have to stay together until enlightenment. It's not like one gets away. the beauty of Rinpoche is these manifestations of the books, the visiting Lamas, and Tubu Dorje. Let's see. Rinpoche gave us Tubu Dorje, and now he's in 7th year, Shedra. He'll finish in 2 years, he'll do 3-year retreat. And from what I hear, Tubus burst out of the shell when they're ready. And I can't wait to see that arriving for us. So I hope we can prepare and get that ready for him to just take off, remove all old habits and create a brand new highway for Tubu Dorje, because he is Gyatrul Rinpoche. He's his teacher. So there was a long list, but I think this is enough. I love you all. I confess any harsh words over my years that I shared with people, and thank you.
Speaking as senior students today, representing you, the Sangha, I have to say, I see this. I see for a moment here how we're the gathering of dakas and dakinis. I mean, I can see it for this moment. Thank you, Rinpoche. So Matthew and I, one thing that's different about us is that we were living at what became Tashi Choling before the Buddhists bought the land. We'd come up there to be part of a commune which had fallen apart, and our friends were living in the pyramid house and we were living in a teepee. And so the first time we ever heard Gyatrul Rinpoche speak in Ashland, we were coming from a teepee. And 2 years later, in 1980, when Dorje Rinpoche, His Holiness Dorje Rinpoche, came to the land to bless it, he stepped out of the helicopter, and I had an experience when I first come there, back in the hippie days, and I stepped on the land, I felt this bolt of lightning go through my body. And when Dorje Rinpoche came and stepped on the land, for a flash, I felt it again, and I saw for a minute how my Lama, Gyatrul Rinpoche, who I just begun to study with for 2 years, I could see the Nyingma order and the lineage, and these things were so out of my ken. Nothing I understood yet, but it was so powerful. And I think that was the true moment for me when I really sort of understood who Gyatrul Rinpoche was. But we were very funky. And an example of that, and something that always makes me sympathetic to young people, because when I think back, I can't even believe this, but they'd asked us to bring something valuable things we had for an offering. And I had some jewelry that had come from my grandparents, and I brought that. And I was happy to donate it because I thought I was going to get it back. I thought that it was an offering and there would be a ceremony and then we would get it back. And so when I found out they were about to bury it, either I made a sound or I was just amazed and appalled. And I looked over at Dorje Rinpoche and Gyatrul Rinpoche, they were like pointing at me and laughing because they could tell that I was not really there yet. And also we were very young. And at one point they, either Dorje Rinpoche or Gyatrul Rinpoche said they needed a white rock, a big white rock. And we were way up, this was way up at the highest point of the land, up behind where the temple is now. And Matthew, who is 22, he said, I know where there's a white rock like that in the creek. And he ran all the way down from the top of that hill to the creek and back up again in like no time. So now I introduce Matthew.
Hello. First, I just want to, first I want to thank Gyatrul Rinpoche because for being the refuge, for being there, like to support the spiritual path. Because I understand that even before I met him, I had decided that enlightenment was the way to go, that I wanted to study on that path. I never would have made any ability to maintain that vow, to maintain that intention without having involved in the shit. There, as the support, is the sort of the pillar, a true pillar of enlightenment. Now, just thinking back to the early days. Oh, sorry. Here. Thinking back to those early days, he used to have a lot of great phrases. He would like teach by saying, drilling a phrase into our head. And one of the early ones that worked really, really well, and it's still like something that I always think of, was honest yourself. He always said, honest yourself. And he never explained what he was talking about. He would just say that to us as a group all the time. He would say that, and it was like it became a very meaningful part of my path to like try to be honest with myself about what am I really doing here? I don't know. What is this action? What is this engagement that I'm doing with Dharma? It's like it was intensely meaningful. The other one that he stressed many times over of the early years particularly was don't bury your shit like a kitty. Call us kitty cats and tell us not to like we're acting like little kitty cats. Yeah. But I think I was really slow on the uptake because one day he gave me a demonstration of what he meant. We were sitting in the backyard at 2nd Street, which was one of the early centers that we had. And it had a little courtyard next to an alley. There was a fence next to the alley, a little courtyard there. And we were sitting there in the late afternoon, and a car went by, and he picked up a rock, quite a large rock, a good handful of a rock, and he took it and he threw it at the car, and it hit the car, bang! Like it was like made a horrible noise. I was sure they were going to stop and say what's going on, but they just kept on driving. And I always thought, what kind of blessing did they get from that? But then he turned to me and said in a really loud voice, he said, I made a mistake. I was like, oh, I'm starting to get what you mean. And there's he was a sort of a miraculous person, and the most obvious was the way he always knew what was on everybody's mind. Because other people's minds were unobstructed to him. He could tell what you were thinking pretty much all the time. And he didn't make any big deal out of it, mostly. But every once in a while, there would be epic stories that he did other kind of more physical, miraculous things. But I only saw one, and it was at that same center on 2nd Street, right when we were closing it down, right when that center was being, we were wrapping it up and we were closing down the shrine room. And I was there with Rasul Dhamma, the monk Rasul Dhamma, and Rinpoche, and we were in the shrine room, putting things away, putting them in boxes, and getting ready to go. And we unplugged the light on the altar, like one of these lotus lights, but a really little one, you know, like a little Christmas tree bulb in a little 10-watt one. And we pulled it out of the wall, but the light didn't go out. And so Rasul Dhamma and I were going, where's the cord? Where's the cord? And we traced it back, and that was it. We were holding the cord. We were holding the cord, and the light was still lit. We were just like, and we called Rinpoche, come look at this. And he just came over and he sort of raised his eyebrows. That's all he did. And I never really understood what that example, that kind of miraculous example meant until now. And when I realized, we're sort of unplugged from the source now. We don't have this physical presence here. That's sort of like a power plant for each of our lives. You know? But the light's still on.
Well, I want to close with a story that's not my own. Because of course at Sangha we also bring a lot of people with us who have passed. And this person a lot of you know, Clark Hansen, or John Paul Gyatso, an American monk who loved Rinpoche very much. He met Rinpoche through Matthew and me. He came to visit us, and this was also when the center was on 2nd Street. And I was so excited because I asked him to babysit, because I thought, finally, I'm going to get to go to a teaching where I don't have babies crawling all over me. And so he babysat very kindly outside, and then at the end of the teaching, he said, "Who is that? What are you doing?" And so we introduced him to Rinpoche, and it was like, as you know, he just took off. And so in one of the very first conversations he ever had with Rinpoche, when he hadn't even started hardly practice, he said, "I want to be a monk, and I want to have a Dharma center in my house." And Rinpoche said, okay, but maybe first, learn the Nundro and do these practices and come to the center and such. And so that's what Clark did. He went on with his life. He practiced assiduously. And then his husband died in the early 2000s, so this was decades later. And he was cast adrift in his big house, and there was a knock on the door, and it was Sangye and Rinpoche, and Rinpoche said, "Well, how about now?" I just love that story. And so he went to Namdrling and became a monk and moved the center into his house and kept Dorje Den alive for many years. And that's his story. So just the longevity of Rinpoche's vision, that just shows, that's one little example. Thank you very much.
I'm one of those Dharma brats that was very disturbing to the meditation practice. I met with Rinpoche in 1976 when I was just a child. I thought he was the coolest Lama because he had a squirt gun in his robes, and if you should fall asleep during the mantra recitation, he would unload on you. And that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen as a child. That gave me permission to, explore and